Legacy. New tonight on our news live at 7. A full military service for the late former commissioner Paul Farquharson funeralized today. Pictures from today's solemn send-off. Plus, breaking records. The country's chief tourism marketing officer touts a travel boom that's exceeded the 2019 banner year. And not above the law. A local women's group applauding prosecutors in the criminal case against North Abaco MP Kirk Cornish, now facing rape allegations, while members say it's a monumental step. Then in our news at 7:30, a former parliamentary clerk goes on record, says Cornish should give up his seat. Our news live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. Well, a day after he was arraigned on charges of rape, North Abaco MP Kirk Cornish making international headlines, detailing his resignation from his cabinet-appointed post at the request of the Prime Minister. In a moment, we'll hear from a local women's group that's calling it a monumental step, but we begin with today's full military funeral service for the late former police commissioner, Paul Farquharson. Now, Farquharson, he was funeralized today in a service at Christ Church Cathedral, a mock burial taking place in Rawson Square, but not before that service. Jamila Mizik reports.
Christ Church Cathedral was filled from altar to door as family and friends paid their final respects to retired former police commissioner and diplomat Paul Farquharson. The full military funeral saw the Governor General, politicians, leaders in the community, and current and former law enforcement officers solemnly recognize the man known as a policeman's policeman. Attendees looked on in reverence as his body was slowly ushered into the cathedral. Reflecting on his journey throughout the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Police Commissioner Clayton Fernandez noting Farquharson's legacy is now a part of Bahamian history.
On December 12, 1966, Paul Farquharson commenced his successful career with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, which spanned an impressive 42 years.
Also paying his respects to the late Farquharson was Prime Minister Philip Davis.
I imagine his hands must have been quite calloused after a lifetime of nation building. From a humble sheep runner to the leader of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the journey of Paul Farquharson is one that astonishes and inspires. We mourn our loss, even as we share in our gratitude for his life, his friendship, his example, and his legacy.
Reverend Canon Sebastian Campbell encouraging those in attendance to keep Farquharson's memory alive.
Paul Farquharson will go down as one of the greatest commissioners.
Led by the Anglican priest and heavily guarded by members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the former police commissioner's body exited the historic halls onto the street, where onlookers waited in anticipation to catch one final glimpse. Now following the service here at Christ Church Cathedral, a mock burial will take place at Rawson Square. However, Farquharson will officially be laid to rest in his hometown of Long Island. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Jamila. And our Joshua Williams, who was along the military parade for the former commissioner, marking his final journey. We've got that story coming up in our news at 7:30. You'll get to see that mock burial that you heard Jamila talk about just there. And now to that local women's group that's applauding the decision to bring criminal charges against North Abaco MP Kirk Cornish, calling it a monumental step that underscores the belief that no individual, regardless of their position, is above the law. The statement by Women United is also calling for the public to guard against making statements indicating either guilt or innocence of the accused. Cornish is accused of raping and assaulting a 35-year-old woman on March 5th while on New Providence. He's also accused of raping the woman and threatening to kill her on April 4th and stands accused of assaulting the complainant on January 20th while in Cooperstown, Abaco. Now, the women's group also condemning the publication of the name of the alleged victim by a news organization, asking society to recognize and respect this struggle of the immense challenges and emotional toll that survivors of such incidents face throughout their journey to justice. All right. right, well, tourism numbers are up and even better than the record-breaking 2019 figures. That's according to Director General of Tourism, Latia Duncombe. She says it comes as travel peaks globally.
You spoke about statistics moments ago. UNWTO in their May edition and in a publication released, they said worldwide we're looking at an 80% of 2019's numbers, which was a banner year for the world. Coming closer to the Americas, that number moves to 86%. Looking at the Bahamas or the Caribbean, I would say, it's at 94%. Year to date, June, yes, we have exceeded our banner year by 29.6%, which is phenomenal.
Now, the Director General partially crediting the pent-up demand built up by the pandemic. But she also says the Bahamas' proximity is drawing the record number of visitors.
Our visitors, as they travel, they don't always want to move too far. And so we've seen the rebound, we've seen the return, we've seen in a pre-pandemic era, 82% of the visitors were from the U.S. In a post-pandemic era, 90% are from the U.S. The direct airlift into the destination is always a plus. When you want to travel, it's the ease of getting to and through the destination. And so we have direct airlift to many of our key source markets, getting into the Bahamas and enjoying it.
All right, now to hear more from the Director General on how the Bahamas is fighting to stay competitive in the tourism market, be sure and stay tuned to tonight's edition of On the Record with Jerome Sawyer. It starts immediately following our news at 7:30. We've got a whole lot more to get to tonight, but for now, it's time for your first look at temperatures, and meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Candino, and a happy Thursday evening, everybody. We are still in this rinse and repeat cycle. It's very warm on the outside. We had temperatures back into the low to mid 90s and the triple-digit indices near the 110. It's 87 degrees outside right now, mostly clear skies. The winds out of the east-northeast at 8 miles per hour, and your field-side temperature is at 97. Temperatures around the islands tonight, right now, it is a very warm 87 in Freeport, 86 in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. We pick up 88s in Alistown, Bimini, Great Harbor Key, and in Nicholstown, Andros. Down in the central Bahamas, 88 in Kemps Bay, 86s again in Arthurstown, Cat Island, and in Georgetown. You guys have some showers nearby. San Salvador, Town, 84, 84 in Deadman's Key, southeast Bahamas, are more mid to upper 80s there. 86 in Duncantown, Ragged Island, as well as Abrahams Bay. You guys in Abrahams Bay seeing some showers nearby. 84 Kern Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, Acklands, 83. 85 in Matthewtown, Inagua. You have some thunderstorms nearby as well. And our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you are 86 at this hour. Satellite and radar composite showing nothing much happening across the islands. As I mentioned, down in the southeast Bahamas, you guys seeing some isolated showers. That's all courtesy of a tropical wave that's actually just across the eastern portion of Hispaniola and western portion of Hispaniola, and eastern Cuba. But there is an upper level, though, that's spinning across the central Bahamas. It's actually dragging a lot of the weather to the east of that upper level low. So we're seeing most of the activity in the Atlantic, just to the east of the Bahamas. But eventually, this system will be moving towards the west. So we should see some more shower activity across portions of the southeast and central Bahamas late tonight and into tomorrow, and eventually moving into the northwest Bahamas by the weekend. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us to look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, a leprosy endemic in Florida has local health officials on alert, but a local infectious disease specialist says there's no need to panic. And learn about a beta camp that's shaping our future engineers. Plus, Sustainability First is back tonight. A deadly wildfire in Maui, putting the focus on how to prevent brush fires when our news returns.
So you need
Well, leprosy is probably a medical condition you didn't expect to hear about tonight or even in the year 2023, but several international news organizations now categorizing leprosy as an endemic in the state of Florida. Megan Shepard spoke exclusively with an infectious disease specialist about what you need to know before your next trip.
There's no need for panic or concern. Yeah, because leprosy is very rare in Florida, and also it's very, very rare in the Bahamas.
According to NPR.org, a team of doctors have identified an uptick in leprosy cases in the United States, with 80% of them recorded in the state of Florida. And more specifically, 20% of all cases were identified in Central Florida. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Nakia Forbes breaks down the signs and symptoms.
It's caused by a bacterium, and persons who do have leprosy, they can have a number of signs and symptoms. So they can have a rash, for example, they can have nodules, and there can be certain areas of the skin where they don't feel sensation.
There are roughly 200,000 cases of the disease, most associated with biblical days, reported globally each year. 200 are reported annually in the United States. Here's what medical professionals know about transmission.
It's not fully understood how leprosy is transmitted. We do know that if there is prolonged contact with people who have leprosy, that's one mode of transmission. There are some animal reservoirs, there are some animals that have leprosy, but in a number of cases, there's no known exposure to the leprosy. And that is what happened in Florida, that those cases were not in contact with anybody who had leprosy, and they hadn't been in contact with any animals that had leprosy, and they had no travel, they were not migrants. And so it was suggested that there could be a cluster of cases in Florida.
Globally, leprosy is still considered as rare. Dr. Forbes says here at home, she's only seen about 2 or 3 cases over the past 80 years. Now, if you plan to travel to Florida this summer, she says there is no need to panic. Simply remain hygienic and follow the usual health and safety advice. Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Megan. If you want to see that story again, be sure and head over to ournews.bs. Well, this summer, hundreds of kids participated in camps across the country, but there was one summer camp right here in New Providence that welcomed eager future engineers through their doors. Jamila Mizik has the story.
Engineers play an important part in creating many things we enjoy, and this summer, 60 youngsters got a first-hand introduction to the profession at Beta Camp. The 2-week-long engineering summer camp focuses on exposing high school students to key engineering disciplines. President and co-founder of Bahamas Engineering and Technology Advancement, Trinika Dukes, explains.
So for us, bridging that gap is really important, and so, my team is really critical to the success of this program, and so we work in different parts of the Bahamas as well as in the U.S. and Canada, and so what we do is we all come home during the summer and we actually contribute our time.
Electrical engineer and camp instructor Shante Cargill says today's introduction will make all the difference in the future.
Knowing to find innovative ideas at a young age and how to improve the Bahamas and make us a better country in general with electrical engineering.
And Beta Camp does not only target students in New Providence.
And one of the things that Beta Camp has done is actually created a couple of scholarships for students from the Family Islands to make their way to the camp to take the flight from Nassau. And obviously that's something that's going to have a big impact on them being from the Family Island. And that's also something that is important to me in terms of paying forward, because I did have a few opportunities and a few people who really made an impact on my life.
16-year-old David Wallace taking a moment to show me what he's learned. He says thanks to Beta Camp, he's found a greater interest in the engineering profession.
By attending this camp, I got an understanding and kind of like hands-on experience about like what I really want to do and like what it's all about.
14-year-old Zenon Seymour is sharing similar sentiments, adding he's hopeful that one day he'll become a successful engineer.
I remember I used to be looking at all the different churches and buildings and wondering how they was built, and I started to get a little bit more focused into it recently, like in the past couple years, and this was really helped me, the Beta Camp, to pursue my passion for engineering.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as trouble in paradise. A Maui wildfire kills dozens as survivors flee into the ocean. Plus, a nearly 7-year jail sentence handed down to a 27-year-old Vincentian woman found guilty of strangling an 83-year-old man to death. And in tonight's Sustainability First, preventing brush fires the focus. After a wildfire in Maui kills dozens, we'll tell you when the local brush fire season begins, when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Wildfires fanned by the winds of a distant hurricane devastated Hawaii's Maui island on Wednesday, killing at least 36 people and forcing tourists and residents to flee as beloved tourist destinations became flaming infernos. This report now from Jillian Kitchener.
Scenes of devastation poured in from Maui on Wednesday.
There's their car.
Where fires caused by winds of a distant hurricane brought death and destruction to the Hawaiian island. Mayor of Maui County, Richard Bisson, told reporters that the death toll could rise.
It was confirmed we've had 6 fatalities that we were able to confirm. And we are still in a search and rescue mode. And so I don't know what will happen to that number. We've had many dwellings, businesses, structures that have been burnt, many of them to the ground.
Some residents on Wednesday were forced to flee for their lives, jumping into the ocean to escape the smoke and fire conditions. Beloved tourist destinations also went up in flames. Newlyweds from Cincinnati, Jolie and Connor Campbell, went on a tour and were unable to safely return to their hotel.
4:30 was when we started to get into Lehana, and we just saw a huge cloud of smoke, and our tour driver, or our tour guide, he didn't know what to do, so we were like approaching it, and then we started to get an Amber Alert saying to evacuate, so we didn't know what to do, and he tried a different route, and that was obviously covered. So we turned around, he ended up dropping us off here, and our stuff is still at our hotel, so we are here at the airport with a flight tonight with no stuff.
By Tuesday night, hundreds of acres had already burned, and roads and schools had closed in parts of Hawaii and Maui counties, according to officials. This drone video of Maui County was shot late Tuesday night.
As I'm taking a look and surveying the fire, I'm actually not really in any of the wind, and people don't really know the severity, which is really stupid.
Satellite images from Wednesday showed wildfire smoke drifting across the Hawaiian Islands. Gale warnings remained in effect for the islands, with 60 miles per hour gusts possible. The National Weather Service told Reuters that the worst of the high winds should end by late Wednesday or early Thursday.
Well, a man who posted violent threats against U.S. President Joe Biden and other officials online was shot dead during an FBI raid on Wednesday. Agents were attempting to serve an arrest warrant on Craig Robertson at his home in Utah, just hours ahead of a planned visit by the president to the state. A criminal complaint said Robertson posted threats on Facebook against Biden and a prosecutor pursuing criminal charges against Donald Trump. The FBI declined to give more details, but according to the complaint, other messages targeted U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and New York Attorney General Letitia James. And a quick warning about this next story from St. Vincent, as the information could be triggering. This as a 27-year-old woman there strangled an 83-year-old man whom she accused of fondling her breasts and touching her private parts as she showered. Justice Ricky Brunette sentenced Sheba Charles, who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, to 6 years and 8 months in prison. The incident is reported to have occurred while she stayed for about a week with the elderly man identified as Ulrich Hutchinson back in November 2020. And over in Antigua was a Pride Watch party to cheer on a mother-daughter team, the first from that island to travel to space. Anastasia Mayers and her mother Keisha Shifa won the tickets to board the Virgin Galactic flight in a competition. John Goodwin from Newcastle Underline became the second person with Parkinson's disease to go to space. The mission will be seen as another test of how viable space tourism is. The flight takes customers past an altitude of 80 kilometers, or about 262,000 feet, which is what the U.S. recognizes as the boundary of space. The spacecraft returned to land at Spaceport America, completing the flight. The mission is Virgin Galactic's 7th space flight to date, and its 3rd since May. The company says it aims to fly spacecraft VSS Unity at a rate of once a month and is developing a fleet of spacecraft called Delta Class that's planned to debut in 2026 to fly at a weekly rate. All right, well, in tonight's Sustainability First report, our Marlena Leonard looks at the causes and devastating impact of brush fires and what we can do to help prevent them.
Bahamas First, putting sustainability first for our people and our environment. What's first for you and the planet comes first for us.
As of this morning, the devastating fires sweeping Maui and Hawaii's Big Island have claimed 36 lives and displaced thousands of Hawaiians, leaving many fleeing to the sea to escape the flames. The fires are being blamed on a number of factors, including dry vegetation, low humidity, and have been exacerbated by strong winds, which can cause a fire over a mile from your home to be at your door in a matter of minutes. We're not unfamiliar with brush fires here in the Bahamas, with our brush fire season running from December to March. But our brush fires are often less of an unfortunate perfect storm like what happened in Hawaii. Here, the finger is often pointed at people who burn their garbage. Garbage burning causes a number of pollutants to be released into the atmosphere, like acid gases, heavy metals, and other harmful compounds. But beyond that, when fires spread beyond your yard, controlling the flames can prove difficult, especially on family islands, where fire services are either limited or even non-existent. Throwing trash out of your car and into the bush can also cause fires, believe it or not. Tossed cigarettes and even broken glass, thanks to its magnifying power concentrating sun rays on grass or twigs, can quickly become out-of-control brush fires. Reporting for Our News and reminding you to put sustainability first, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was August 10th. Then in our news at 7:30, a prominent clergyman says our leaders are to be held to a higher standard after North Abaco MP Kirk Cornish now facing rape charges. This as a former parliamentary clerk says he believes the embattled MP should resign his seat. Find out his reasoning when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was August 10th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 1974, a news article from the Tribune about an enduring legacy by a man who once lived in an Abaco cave. A statue about his legacy was unveiled the next day in Rawson Square that was made by a Canadian professor in Abaco. Then fast forward to 2016, when the first reported case of the Zika virus was confirmed in the Bahamas. During a press conference at the Ministry of Health, officials reported a man who recently traveled to Jamaica had contracted the virus. Officials said the man had tested positive the day before. Immediate measures were taken as officials ordered fogging in several areas to prevent a possible spread. The Bahamas' first confirmed case came one day after confirmed cases in the Cayman Islands and Miami, Florida. Then in 2018, Stephen Isaacs was sworn in as Chief Justice. At the time, then Prime Minister Hubert Minnis was heavily criticized for leaving the Chief Justice post vacant since December 2017. Isaacs swore his service to the Bahamian people to the best of his abilities and promised to help make the country's judicial system more efficient. Isaacs succeeded former Chief Justice Sir Hartman Longley, who was appointed president of the Court of Appeal. 2 weeks later, the 63-year-old, who was reportedly battling cancer, died in hospital. A cabinet statement confirmed his death, calling him a judge's judge, the epitome of the highest standards of conduct of a judicial officer, and recognized him for upholding the rule of law, justice, order, and proper decorum in his courtroom. And finally, in 2021, a change to the $100 bill saw the removal of Queen Elizabeth II's image and was replaced with the image of former Governor General and Deputy Prime Minister Arthur Hanna. Then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis said the change was a fitting tribute to the legacy and contributions of Hanna, who had passed away the week prior. And before we leave you tonight, do you know someone who may be technically inclined and on the hunt for a job? Well, if so, Alive says it's hiring and hiring on the spot. The company hosting a job fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. tomorrow right here at Cable Bahamas in the Field Keeping Building on Old Trail and Robinson Road. There is an open position for an install and repair technician. Previous work experience as a cable technician or similar role is strongly preferred. Being physically fit and having excellent problem-solving skills are among the qualifications HR reps will be looking for. As for documents to bring, a resume, high school diploma, valid driver's license, passport, police record, NIB card, medical certificate. Don't worry, if you want to get a look at the full job posting, you can head over to ournews.bs and Our News Bahamas on Facebook. To watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall with the latest headlines. Italia?
Yes, Ken, thanks so much. Well, coming up tonight, a prominent clergyman says our leaders are to be held at a higher standard. Plus, former parliamentary clerk says in-battle MP for North Abaco should resign his seat. Here are your latest headlines. A higher standard new tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. Why a religious leader says those in positions of authority should be held to a higher standard. This as a former House of Assembly clerk says in-battle North Abaco MP facing charges of rape should give up his seat. Plus, former Police Commissioner Paul Farquharson laid to rest today. Our Joshua Williams has the story. Also, more oil residue discovered on the island of Grand Bahama. This as tourists say the situation is unfortunate. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Doctors Hospital is reimagined primary care. We have invested to improve our health system, ensuring that accessible, affordable, world-class clinical care is closer to you. Your relationship with a primary care provider shapes the foundation of your overall health. Our new, modern primary care facilities are where critical diagnosis and true personalized treatment begin. With locations across New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Exuma, we invite you to experience the Doctors Hospital difference. Book your next appointment at clinics.doctorshos.com.
If new, Heineken Silver was a riveting Viking saga.
Lars the 12th, your family tortured my first wife and stole my second favorite goat. Now you want to marry my daughter. Okay.
All the taste, no bitter endings. Smooth, fresh, silver.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Italia Hall. A solemn send-off for former Police Commissioner Paul Farquharson in a full military service this morning. His coffin escorted down Bay Street in a military parade and mock burial ceremony watched by dozens. Our Joshua Williams was along the route this morning and has more in a moment, but first, a local pastor calling for leaders to have a higher standard and be mindful of those who are looking up to them. His comments shadow the arraignment of two sitting members of Parliament and calls for a few others to resign. Berthing McDermott has his candid comments in this report.
Living Waters Kingdom Ministries Senior Pastor Raymond Wells is stressing the importance of religious and political leaders keeping high standards. While not speaking to any specific situation, Wells said leaders must be mindful of the impact their decisions have on those who look up to them.
On a political front, you still stand as the representation of the nation. We look up to your leadership. All right, so we have to be very careful of the decisions we make, the things we do, because it affects the people who are looking up to you. To whom much is given, much is required.
His comments come after North Abaco Member of Parliament Kirk Cornish was arraigned on charges of rape, assault, and threats of death. He's the second MP to go before the courts. Embattled Long Island MP Adrian Gibson is also standing trial on bribery and money laundering. Immigration Minister Keith Bell came under fire for what some are calling questionable actions at the Department of Immigration, which resulted in calls for his resignation. Meanwhile, Wells says the issue with leaders is concerning.
Who do the young people look up to now? Who do I look up to? If persons over me making stupid decisions, if persons in leadership in the country making stupid decisions, that affect me because I look up to them for leadership. It affects the next generation who look up to them for leadership. What can you say to me if you can't keep your house in order?
Wells, who also serves as chaplain at the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, doubled down, stressing the need for integrity.
We need men and women in leadership who are going to pull their pants up and be men and women with integrity. That's what we need in our country. Integrity is consistent. It is truth. Truth don't change.
And to religious leaders,
you represent God. So you must be committed to making sure that whatever decision you make reflect the God that you say you serve.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, thanks for that, Berthany. Well, former Chief Parliamentary Clerk Maurice Tyne says while there's no requirement for North Abaco MP Kirk Cornish to resign, he believes he should give up his seat. Now, Cornish was arraigned Wednesday on charges of rape, assault, and threats of death.
When these matters happen, I would like to see the members offer their resignation. Unfortunately, in the Bahamas, we kind of equate resignation with admission of guilt, which, to my mind, it is not. They're two different things, you know. You can resign for your personal reasons. You can resign for the betterment of the institution.
Cornish is the second sitting MP to be charged in recent months. Long Island MP Adrian Gibson is also standing trial. Both MPs are continuing to represent their constituents. Now, should either of them be convicted, Tyne says there may be a greater urge for a resignation.
There is a requirement in the rules that you have to attend so many minutes. You can't miss a number of meetings. So if he's incarcerated, and he maybe will not be able to make that benchmark. And but there's no legal requirement for him to resign. But I think if that happened, if he is convicted, I think the leader of his party and the party itself probably put more on his constituents, would probably put more pressure on him to resign.
Well, a 51-year-old man who stole laundry supplies during a break-in at the Rectory of St. Mary, the Virgin Anglican Church, has been jailed for 2.5 years. Dennis Darville pleaded guilty to housebreaking and stealing at his arraignment before Acting Chief Magistrate Roberta Rackley. Darville stole a 6-gallon shop vacuum cleaner and cleaning supplies valued at just over $219 during the August 1st break-in. Now, priest Colin Humes identified Darville as the culprit after checking surveillance footage. Darville sometimes cleaned the yard and came to the priest's home daily for meals. The court heard that Humes confronted Darville about the theft when he saw him walking along Augusta Street. Darville initially denied that he was responsible, but he admitted his misdeeds when he was shown the security footage. Now, as a result, the priest detained Darville until police arrived. Police only recovered the stolen vacuum cleaner as Darville claimed that someone had removed the cleaning supplies from where he had stashed them. Armed robberies are becoming more and more frequent, and chances you or someone you may know may have been a victim. But what do you do if you find yourself in that position? Well, police taking time out to share the do's and don'ts when confronted by an armed robber. Our Joshua Williams reports.
Police statistics reveal there were 555 armed robberies last year, something the force is looking to lessen. Assistant Superintendent Antonio Lavardi says when faced with an armed robbery, it's important to know what to do.
Try to remain calm. I know someone looking at me perplexed saying, I could never be calm with a gun in my face. That's why I say try to remain calm. And everybody is calm in their own way. Some people may giggle. Some people may see themselves. Some persons may comply. but you have to try to remain calm.
Police are also concerned about residents who choose to disarm robbers.
And you ask them why the gun did look fake. The gun did look fake, and he only trying to take $5 from you, and you're going to take a chance? No.
Lavardi also shares that persons often forget very important things that can help to solve a case.
Most of the time, people either are too afraid, they gossiping, they laughing at who hide under the table, and they forget to call the police. Take notes of persons and get names, where possible, before they leave. Very important. While an armed robbery happens, there are some steps that you can take to assist us. Because one armed robber in jail, that's one less we have to deal with.
Lavardi has this important message.
Money can be replaced. 9 out of 10 times, it's the people's money you protect. It's a life that can't be replaced. So when you decide to do some things, to cost some things, that's never going to come back.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, thanks, Josh. Scorching hot temperatures on this Thursday around the islands, but be sure to have your umbrellas nearby as there is some rain in the forecast. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with your first check on weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia, and welcome everybody for a quick check on conditions outside our studios and around the islands. It's still very warm on the outside. 87 degrees is our current temperature. Under mostly clear skies, your winds are out of the east-northeast at 8 miles per hour, and your field slight temperature is very warm in 97 degrees. Satellite radar composite showing nothing really happening across the Bahamas. That ridge of high pressure is still in charge, but we have a tropical wave that's moving towards the west, just across the eastern portion of eastern Cuba. But we do have an upper level low that's spinning. It's dragging a lot of the weather towards the east of the islands. We could see 1 or 2 showers in the southeast Bahamas, but eventually this will make it into the central Bahamas and the northwest Bahamas over the next couple of days. That's a quick check on conditions around the island. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, a man of honor. A full military service held this morning for former Police Commissioner Paul Farquharson. Also, more oil residue found on Grand Bahama, this time on a major highway. We'll tell you all about it. This as visitors are describing the recent appearance of oil on beaches in Grand Bahama as an unfortunate situation when Our News returns. Are you or a loved one under medical?
Introducing the Focal Smartpass app that helps you to fuel up faster. Here's how it works. Download the app on the App Store or get it on Google Play and create your profile with payment details. Visit your nearest Shell station, open the app, scan the pump's QR code, select your payment amount, and begin fueling. Say goodbye to cash and cards because the Focal Smartpass offers secure and convenient payment options right at your fingertips. Download Focal Smartpass now and fuel up faster today.
Following a heartwarming funeral service during the morning, former Police Commissioner Paul Farquharson's body was escorted down Bay Street for a military parade and mock burial ceremony that was watched by dozens. Our Joshua Williams was there and has a recap.
The tolls of the historic Christchurch Cathedral bell marked the final journey of late Commissioner Paul Farquharson as his body was prepped to be carted off to Rawson Square. The sound of the band and the footsteps of the police officers were the only things that can be heard as the commissioner's casket was drawn through the streets of Bay Street as both residents and tourists paid their respects. Stopping in this square, Farquharson's body would be placed on a mock burial site. It was here where family members, fellow officers, and political figures paid their final respects to one of the force's royal sons. And as tradition would have it, a final gun salute. Police Commissioner Clayton Fernander then presented a token to the wife of the late commissioner as she bid farewell to her husband. We spoke to a visitor who was in awe of what he saw.
We came down actually to see Parliament Square last night. It was so quiet, and this is a really big contrast to that. Clearly a lot of respect was paid, and it's quite a gallant ceremony.
Now, this will not be the final resting place for the late commissioner, as his body will be flown to Long Island, where he will be buried in his hometown. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
Thanks for that, Josh. And now to news from Grand Bahama as more oil residue has been found. What you're looking at in these images is oil residue on East Sunrise Highway. The Grand Bahama Port Authority releasing a statement this afternoon on the incident as they say they've engaged sanitation services to address the issue using industry absorbents that removes any possible hazards to ensure the safety of the motoring public. Port officials say they are also pursuing the matter with the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And Lakaya Service Company and other agencies on Grand Bahama still investigating the appearance of oil particles on beaches across Grand Bahama. Tourists showing Our News oil on their feet, swimsuits, and hands while visiting Taino Beach on Wednesday. Some say the situation is unfortunate and hopes that the matter is resolved soon.
It's unfortunate for the environment. I hate to hear that.
We're definitely going to stay, but I do feel not as much concerned about myself because, you know, I can move, I can go somewhere else, but I do feel about the industry here and, of course, the fish and how the environment is being affected by it.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Asuma collects hardware at the Commonwealth Games in Trinidad and Tobago, and the sports minister talks about the national basketball and track teams. Don't go anywhere, our sports is coming up next.
And extremely hot temperatures in the capital today, but we can expect some rain soon. Hopefully things cool down a bit. Greg is back with your extended weather when Our News continues.
Los
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
This is our news. Welcome back. A Bahamian swimmer medals at the Commonwealth Games, and the sports minister talks about our national teams. Here's Tage Adderley from Bimini with a check on sports. Tage.
Good evening, I'm Tage Adderley, joining you from beautiful Bimini for our sports. Marvin Johnson was part of a Carifta team that dominated earlier this year. He's back to his winning ways. Swimmer Marvin Johnson is coming home from Trinidad and Tobago with some hardware. The Carifta champ won silver medal in the men's 50-meter freestyle at the Commonwealth Games in a time of 22.54 seconds, less than 0.2 of a second behind Nikolai Blackman of the host country. Heading into his junior year at the McCallie School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Johnson is one of the top swimmers in the state. Great work by Marvin. He'll be collecting medals for years to come. Moving on, we talked to Minister Mario Boleg. He spoke about the basketball and track team's upcoming international trips.
But, you know, this is something that was in the making some years ago to try and to get those persons who have ties with the Bahamas to be able to play for the Bahamas.
That's Sports Minister Mario Boleg talking about the lengthy process undertaken to get Eric Gordon released from USA Basketball and eligible to play for Team Bahamas. Boleg was a coach for the national team for almost 2 decades before he became sports minister, so he's all too familiar with the process. He also talked about the track and field team's up-and-coming trip to the World Athletics Championship in Budapest, Hungary.
I'm looking for great things coming from Stevie Gardner and all of those other athletes who will be representing us over there.
We'll have more on both of those trips next week. That'll do it for sports today. I'm Tage Adderley.
Temperatures in the mid-90s on this Thursday as the weekend quickly approaches. Greg is back with the extended forecast when our news returns. Stay with us. Welcome back to our news. Another hot day as the weekend quickly approaches. Do you have any big plans? Well, Greg is back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast. Greg?
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody, for a final check on weather conditions around the islands. We are under the the influence of a high-pressure ridge at the surface. But there's an upper level low that's spinning across the central Bahamas, and a tropical wave. It's actually moving across the eastern portion of Cuba, and that upper level low is dragging a lot of the moisture across the southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos Islands, and to the east of the islands. Eventually, this will all move towards the west, so we're looking for increasing cloudiness with some showers and thunderstorm activity across the central Bahamas by tomorrow, and then eventually by Saturday, we expect the conditions to be deteriorating across the northwest Bahamas, and when I mean deteriorating, we're looking for some showers and some thunderstorm activity. Infrared showing the activity, as I mentioned, just to the east of the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos Islands. Now you guys getting in on some activity. And as I said, across the course of the next couple of days, it will move across that area. That tropical wave will jut out towards the west and move away from us. In the rest of the tropics, the remaining parts of the tropics, quiet. Nothing happening out there. A couple of tropical waves across the tropical belt. We have a strong one that's eventually going to be moving off of Africa over the next couple of days. But the tropics remain quiet throughout the next 7 days. Future forecast showing nothing happening across the area. That upper level low spinning. Most of the activity, as mentioned, staying to the east of the Bahamas. Some of that moving into the central Bahamas by tomorrow. And then on Saturday, the bulk of the activity will be moving into the northwest Bahamas. So showers and thunderstorms will be in your forecast for the weekend. Plan on doing any beaching or boating for the northwest Bahamas. Your winds will be southeast to south, 10 to 15 knots. Seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. You can expect your low tide at 11:01 tonight. For the central and southeast Bahamas, caution flag in place for you guys down there. The winds picking up. East to south east winds, 15 to 20 knots. And your seas will be running 4 to 6 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, showers in the forecast starting tomorrow and then eventually increasing across the northwest Bahamas by Saturday. And as that upper level low continues to move out towards the west, we will continue to see a couple isolated showers, and that will continue through about Tuesday of next week. And then by the middle to the end of next week, conditions will be improving and the heat will be back on. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
All right, thanks, Greg. And with that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening. On the Record with Jerome Sawyer starts right now.